So it's the new year and you're ready to get in shape. You've decided that you're going to get into the ketogenic diet, or you've finally decided to commit, one of the two, but you are finding it a little bit overwhelming with all the information out there. Where do you start? What is going to work best for you? Before you jump into switching and changing around your macros and foods like crazy, I want to give you a solid grounding in what the ketogenic diet actually is and my 3 secrets to staying consistent with the ketogenic diet. If you are interested in limiting carbs and going keto the easy way, I am running what's called the 5-day carb cleanse, which is basically a 5-day video course that runs you through the ins and outs of going carb free and finding the style of keto that works for you. If you are interested in joining in, the link is in the description below. Firstly, the ketogenic diet is not an unhealthy, unsustainable diet. People might tell you this, or you might have heard this from the media, but it's total nonsense and it's created by people who are frankly addicted to carbs. And deep down, those people still need to believe that carbs are the only source of energy, and without them, you'll likely find it hard to get healthy. If you don't have enough carbs to feed your brain with energy, your body will create its own through gluconeogenesis. No carbs are necessary for this process. Fats and protein are the only sources of nutrition that your body cannot create. Fat and protein are vital for every function in your body. But let's dig into exactly what you should be focusing on to stay keto and make keto a sustainable diet, since macro tracking and calorie counting isn't always the answer. The first and most important step to stay keto is to limit your carbohydrate content. If you make sure you're not eating more than 5% of your total intake of calories from carbs, your body will run out of glycogen, otherwise known as stored carbohydrate energy, and start generating ketones for energy. If you ignore everything else and just focus on carbs, you will eventually go keto. You don't need exogenous ketones, you don't need MCT oil, you don't need any shakes or powders to get you into a state of ketosis. Unfortunately, there is no magic pill. It's either you're in ketosis or you're not. And that all depends on your carbohydrate intake. It sounds simple, right? But once you cut out all of the bread and pasta and grains and rice and sugar and root vegetables such as potatoes and sweet potatoes, there isn't much else that will prevent you from staying keto. The only problem is weaning yourself off those foods can be hard. For 2 reasons. You'll probably become very accustomed to cooking with carbs, and reducing carbs can feel like coming off an addictive substance, specifically sugar, since it lights up your brain's neural network much like any other drug does. So figure whether you're an abstainer or a moderator. In other words, can you tolerate abstinence, or do you have to come off it slowly, to figure out whether you go cold turkey off the carbs or whether you go slowly into low carb over the period of a few weeks or so. So if you didn't get the memo, that was tip number 1, cut the carbs. Once you master that tip, then I want you to focus on tip number 2. Most people take a few weeks to get to this stage, so don't rush it. Take your time and you'll be feeling better before you know it. Tip number 2 is all about protein, specifically eating enough protein. So protein is important to keep lean muscle, but it's important to keep you feeling satiated without consuming too much overall food. To work out how much protein you need, you will need to go over to my website and enter your details into my macro calculator. This will figure out how much protein you need, and it will give it to you in either raw weight or cooked weight. If you're a vegetarian and you need to avoid meat for some particular reason, you'll likely have to track your macros for a few days using an app such as Cronometer to ensure you're getting enough protein without going over your carb limit. So this is the deal so far. Rule number 1, limit your carbs. Rule number 2, eat enough protein. And for those of you who are scared of eating too much protein for fear of being kicked out of ketosis, you can watch my other video that talks all about this topic up here. The last and final secret to no-fail keto is this: fasting. When you combine fasting along with the ketogenic diet, you are much more likely to be able to tap into your fat storage system. If you cannot fast for medical reasons, then just focus on tips 1 and 2. But if you're having trouble fasting or you find it uncomfortable, it likely means you're not fat adapted yet. And this means you've broken rule number 1 and you're consuming too many carbs. My ideal fasting protocol is this: try intermittent fasting first. Work your way up to 16 hours fasting and see how you feel. If you're tempted by carbs or you have a bad feeling you might be tempted to stuff your face full of whatever's in the fridge after work, once again, it means you're eating too many carbs or there are bigger issues at play, which can be assessed by a nutritional expert. Back off the fasting and go back to number 1 and 2. I know most of you are already probably intermittent fasting, so this section is for you. I want you to experiment with a 24-hour fast. This means that during a fast, you're allowed to drink water, electrolytes, black coffee, black tea, and that's it. Technically, coffee and tea are also breaking a fast, but it only breaks the digestion aspect of fasting. We're aiming for fat-burning, protein recycling autophagy, so including 1 or 2 24-hour fasts during a week will be ideal. So that's it from me, folks. Again, if you are interested in learning more about fasting, limiting carbs, and making the most of your body without sugar or refined foods, we're running what's called the 5-day carb cleanse. And it's basically a 5-day video course that runs you through the ins and outs of going carb-free and finding your style of keto and what works for you. If you are interested in joining, the link is in the description below. So until next week.